Sorry, there was a power cut here. That is the reason why it is getting disconnected so often. Is my voice audible?
Audible, sir.
Screen, is it visible?
No, sir. Please.
Yes.
It's up now.
Visible, sir.
Yes. Right then. So what I'm saying is the first stage, how the branch has evolved over a period of time. As a branch of, in the earlier days, political science was not studied separately. Rather, it is studied as a branch of your philosophy. Philosophy is the major branch by that point of time, right? And they said that philosophy is nothing but saying about physics, what is good life, what is moral life. So that is called philosophy. Now, in ethics, those who are studying ethics, your first chapter of ethics, ethics chapter 1. In ethics, there is one chapter that is called approaches to ethics or study of ethics, deontological approach, theological approach. So, under that, you study this component. So, ethics is the main branch which was evolved way back in the ancient Greece, and this is the first study that they had. Thinkers like Socrates, Plato, they give more importance to philosophy. The ethics paper that you are reading today, right? It has its roots in this ancient Greece. So there also in the ethics paper also you have one chapter as this one, thinkers and these things, right? So the first branch which evolved is philosophical branch, that is called moral branch or ethical branch. And then they used to study what is ethical life, what is good for the humans, what is how the king has to conduct, how the rulers has to conduct, how the people have to conduct. So this evolved at that point of time as a philosophy branch. Now over a period of time, it was studied. The entire ancient history or ancient times, they studied political science as a branch of philosophy and they did not consider that this is a separate branch. Why they never considered it as a separate branch? The reason is this, I said. Plato clearly said that ethics and politics cannot be separated. Ethics is very vital for politics, and without ethics, politics is not going to sustain. For example, he has given a famous statement saying that a good life is nothing but a good political life. You are having a good political life, then life is going to be good. Because in a good political life, good ethics will be present. Hence, in order to be living in a very good environment, the most important thing is an ethical life. Hence, it is read as a ethical life, or this is known as philosophical approach. This philosophy or studying political science as a branch of philosophy is known as normative approach. Normative approach. What do I mean by normative approach, or what do you mean by normative approach? Philosophy deals with the norms. Norms. What are norms? Principles or rules. What is good, right? What ought to be, what has to be there, what ought to be. What do I mean by what ought to be? It is never bothered about what is. It speaks about idealistic values. It has to be in this way. Speak truth at any cost. If you are lying, then what you are doing is based on the situation. No, that is wrong. You be an idealist. Idealist means you have to always do one thing that always enhances the ethics. That is called you ought to be in this way, you are in this way. So they always speak about ideals, they always speak about principles. Hence, they always speaks about norms. As norms, principles, these are components of ethics. The first branch of political science has been a discipline of this philosophical branch. Philosophical branch is also speaking about norms. As it is speaking about norms, you call it as the normative approach of political science. So, in short, I'll tell this again, but let me quickly wind up the stages, then I'll come to this normative approach. But in short, as I have said, as we are reading political science in the earlier days as a branch of philosophy, philosophy deals with the norms as it is related to norms. The approach of political science through this lens is known as the normative approach. So by this point of time, you should have approach that whenever I say normative approach is studying of political science from the angle of philosophy, from the angle of morals, from the angle of ethics. So, to keep in a very simple context, you can say that in the earlier days, during the times of ancient Greek city states, political science optional. There is no political science optional, only one optional, that is called ethics. If you are studying ethics, there is no 500 marks separate political science optional. Right, this is what the major science is. So, studying political science from this approach is called normative. Why you call this as normative? Because in sciences or in philosophy, you study about norms, hence it is called normative approach. This is how the branch has developed in the early years, way back in 3rd century BC, and it continued until the so-called 2nd century, 1st century, and then it comes to 2nd century AD, 3rd century AD. Slowly, the branch was under the normative approach. Over a period of time, when we come to medieval times, slowly, religion started influencing the so-called political science. As a result, political science became a sub-discipline of religion now. Because over a period of time, as the history started evolving from norms, you started coming under the so-called the influence of religion or under the influence of church. Church used to dominate what are the systematic processes that you have to lay down to rule this. Right? Church used to dominate about the institutions, church used to dominate about the persons, church used to dominate about the processes which has to be involved in a particular domain. As a result, in the medieval times, the subject has been a sub-discipline of religious studies. Hence, religion used to play a very vital role in the so-called determining the politics. Or politics was an indispensable part of the church or religion. Studying the group or studying these principles under one religion is known as scholasticism. Right? Scholastic means studying the discipline under a big discipline of religion. Right? See, Barker said political science is a master science. But what we observe is earlier it is not a master science, rather it was a sub-discipline of another master science that is called philosophy. In the medieval times, it was a sub-discipline of one more thing that is called religion, as or it has been called as scholastic measures. For a period of time, as we started entering into the industrial revolution era during 15th century, what happened is there were some thinkers who thought that church influence is very excessive. As a result, they thought that you have to remove church from politics. As a result, the concept of secularism started coming in by medieval period of time. What is secularism? Secularism means separate the church from politics. Right? Secularism means the state should not have any religion, religion should not be having any role in the state politics. So the person who has said about this one is one person called Machiavelli. And as Machiavelli started separating religion from church, he is the one who has laid down the foundations for secular state, and then he is the person who has given political science a entire new entity. So the third stage is the stage where you have Machiavelli and his rule. What happened during Machiavelli? Machiavelli, the famous thinker, he said that political science should be not made as a separate discipline, rather it has to be made a part and parcel of the so-called the sub-discipline. Machiavelli, he said that religion has nothing to do with your politics, ethics has nothing to do with your politics. He made it very clear when you are ruling, don't bother about ethics, don't bother about your religion. Politics is something which is completely outside your ethics, which was there in the previous era, that is when it was present in ancient times. In the religion, in the medieval times, it was made a parcel of your religion. So he said that separate this politics from ethics and religion as such. Now, why he said this? If you want to secure the interests of a country, religion should not play a very crucial role. Rather, ethics should not be a crucial role. If some country is attacking your country, you cannot sit ideally saying that peace is the ultimate thing. That is ethical thing. But you have to do unethical things. You have to use violence if someone is hurting the state. Because the ultimate objective of the state is to protect the good of the human beings which are located in your domain. Hence, the prime responsibility of the king or the prince is to protect the people rather than following the morals or following the religious aspects. Hence, he has said this principle, and this gave a new dimension or new life to political science. And from that day onwards, he is the first person who made political science to be an autonomous discipline and not a branch or sub-branch of your philosophy, or not a sub-branch of the so-called ethics, sorry, philosophy, ethics, or religion. Rather, he said that make political science as its own discipline. Hence, he is the founder, or he is the person who laid strong foundations for autonomy of political science, and he is the first person to do so in the entire history of political science. From then onwards, what this person clearly said is, don't base your politics on ethics, don't base your politics on religion, rather base your politics on the statistics or on the facts. Hence, he said that for politics, we have to go for empirical study, that is called scientific study. What is this empirical? Whenever empirical comes, I mean to say that facts, science.
Sir, voice is not clear.
Power has come now. Is it clear now?
Clear, sir, audible.
Fine. Now, the point is, what this person started saying is, you make politics separate from the so-called you make politics separate from the so-called
Religion, ethics.
religion, but make it as a separate discipline. You are able to see the screen now.
No, sir.
No. So what he started saying is, you separate it as a separate discipline, and go for that discipline should be not based on your ethics or not based on your so-called religion. Rather, it has to be guided by one thing called facts. Right? Now, for that, he said that from where you'll get facts is, you'll get facts from history. Look at the history of the world. Look at the history of your surroundings. Then you'll understand how the politics are working. If your history, if you have seen that a king who is following ethical values is getting defeated and losing the kingdom, so what is the lesson that you learn from that history is, whenever there is some threat, don't follow ethical values. So he said that you get the facts. So from where you will get the fact? By analyzing the history, right? So what he said is, for politics we have to go for empirical search rather than ethics or religion. So what Machiavelli did is, he started getting the discipline out of the so-called the erstwhile political science or religion, but he said that no, political science has to be based on the historical facts. Did you understand this? Right. Now, as he has said that you have to get it under empiric historical facts, now what mistake that he has done is, he started moving the political science subject towards the so-called history. I said in the beginning itself, social sciences has history as one subject, as one discipline. Now he is trying to make the political science to be a sub-discipline of history, and this was highly criticized by the next generation leaders or next generation thinkers. But one thing that you have to appreciate Machiavelli is, he said that ethics and religion doesn't have anything with your history. One thing that he has said is, you go for empirical analysis, where from where you get that empirical analysis from history point of view. So slowly, with Machiavelli, they started taking the subject towards historical analysis, and slowly the subject started having affinity towards history by moving away from this. Gradually, from then onwards, it evolved as a separate discipline. Study of the state became the core principle. Gradually, this discipline has become separate in its own entity. Now it is not bothered about ethics, now it is not bothered about religion, but it is bothered about the state, it is bothered about the power, it is bothered about the system, how to run the system, irrespective of ethics, irrespective of philosophies, irrespective of your religion. Now it started focusing on state. So From philosophy as the core principle, they moved away and they have made one thing as core philosophy, that is called state. So today, when you study about political science, you study it from the lens of state, domestic politics, how the state is conducting in its domestic politics, foreign relations, how the state is conducting its foreign relations. So it has evolved with the state. And over a period of time, the state's influence in political science has been to that extent that it is being said that political science begins with the state and it ends with the state. So, political science, in short, is nothing about the state. So, today we have moved from ethics, we have moved from religion, we have moved from history, rather, we are more concentrated about the apparatus called state and how that state is being governed, what are the institutions that are governing the state. So we study all these principles as state. As we are studying everything under the concept of state, this is known as politics begins with the state, political science begins with the state today, and it ends with the state. I hope you got a fair idea about stage 3, right? And then over a period of time, as we are moving for the next stages, what happened? Look at this. In the stage 4, post World War II, until World War II, I said it was about Greek cities, I said about it was Machiavelli, all these thinkers are European thinkers. European thinkers. Europe used to dominate the world stage until the Second World War. Right, until Second World War, whatever is happening in Europe, that is used to reflect on the entire parts of the globe. But after Second World War, Europe has, or the superiority of Europe has declined, and then the superior or the superpower has become between USSR and USA, that you know about Cold War. Now, after Second World War, what happened? The power has shifted, or the analysis has shifted from the so-called Europe to USA. Now, the USA political scientists started speaking about the so-called political thing or political science. Until World War II, it was carried by European political thinkers. Now, the political thinkers who are dominating is USA thinkers. So, the modern concept of political science comes from the schools of America, from the schools of USA. Now, what these people did after Second World War is there is one organization called American Political Science Association, American Political Science Association in USA. This started having a separate discipline for political science, and they used to study about the process and processes which are happening in the so-called America, which are happening under this so-called political science. Now, what they thought is, let's not make the facts in that case, rather you have to make political science as a separate discipline such as pure science. You make political science as a pure science. So now see, from social science, they are moving this as a pure science. Right. So the concept started now moving to pure science. I said, what is pure science? Like this book, this is called pure science, systematic analysis, scientific analysis. So they wanted to make political science to be a pure science. What do I mean by pure science? Make exact principles like Newton has said, right? Then it is going to work. So this is called behavioralism. Behavioralism school studies about the scientific analysis. Behavioralism is a school which studies about the techniques, and that techniques are being applied in political science. As a result, where behavioralism started playing a crucial role. So whenever the term behavioralism comes, it is nothing but scientific analysis, or this is nothing but a scientific study of the subject based on the proofs, facts. So behavioralism is something which is related to pure science, norms is something which is related to social science. Now political science has been again drifted from social science towards the so-called pure science after the Second World War from 1945 to 1960. But after 1960, again they observed that one prime factor that they observed is, if you are making political science completely pure science, again the subject is losing its relevance, right? Just like physics, biology, and chemistry, you are making that again a part of pure science. So the subject is relating its subject relevance and it is compromising the subject matter. What is the subject matter? Political science should study about the so-called politics, it studies about the society, it studies about how the people are. Whenever you are studying about how the people are, you cannot have pure definitive conclusions, right? Because science is something which has pure conclusions or exact conclusions. In society, you cannot have exact conclusions. What is the reason? The reason is simple. You don't know when the behavior of the person is changing, when the behavior of the state is changing, when the behavior of the nation is changing. Hence, given the dimensions which are changing, you cannot apply pure laws which are applied in science to the political science. So, post behavioralism evolved as an alternative to the so called behavioralism. It included some component of behavioralism, but it has advanced the behavioralism concept. So, because they thought that political science can be applied science than a pure science. Political science is something which you can apply, which you can be applied or which you can take from the application process rather than a pure science. So, post behavioralism evolved after 1960s. Slowly, after 1960s, we came back to 2000, 2010. By this point of time, again in Europe, a new trend started that is called postmodernism. Critical schools started, which have started criticizing whatever the political thinkers have been saying about the so-called behavioralism, post-behavioralism. They are speaking about postmodernism. You have to study political science from another domain called postmodernism. What do you mean by postmodernism? You have to include the evolving trends in the political science. Just don't confine political science only to democracy, only to politics, only to the state. Rather, there are some people who are going to play a very crucial role. Rather, it is the family who is playing a crucial role. Don't confine this subject only to men. Even female are playing a very crucial role. Hence, feminist scholars has come out and they started saying that political science has to be looked from the perspective of feminists. Even the ecologists have come forward and said that political science has to be studied from ecological science. So postmodernism, whatever the modern aspects that have been playing a very crucial role, they started dominating in the political science domain. And critical schools which are very critical to the traditional schools like philosophical schools, legal institutional schools, they were very critical to that, and they said that you are confining your subject only for a particular domain, expand the subject so that it will be advanced to everyone. In the same process, after 2000, the study has been between Europe and the study has been between the so-called USA.